this edition of Optimal Talks. In this series of frank conversations, I will chat to a diverse range of security specialists and industry influencers to explore their opinions and ideas, picking apart some of the key issues we all face today. I hope you enjoy the next 30 minutes. If you do, leave us your thoughts and comments and spread the word. Thanks. Good morning, John. How are you doing today?
Very well, Rick. How are you?
I'm very well. And you're in sunny Belfast. Is it sunny?
It is sunny. Yeah, I think we've had our summer for this weekend. So it's sunny, it's warm, and it's not raining, which is quite a nice change.
Nice. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Optimal Talks. This series is all about bringing specialist subjects and professionals that we come across at Optimal Risk Group, and then talking to them about things that you might find interesting. We try and find diverse groups of people in diverse industries, and this is one I think is quite specialist. Now, Salt Communications, Salt is an instant messaging app, but it's entirely encrypted, and it's something we've been using at Optimal Risk for quite some time, certainly long before I joined the business, and we find it a very useful tool with our clients and so on. But rather than me tell everybody what that is, John, why don't you just sort of give us a little bit of an overview of what your role is, where the company is, what you guys are trying to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role within Salt is I'm the head of business development and partnerships at Salt Communications, formerly Salt DNA. I joined the company at the end of 2015 when we were sort of taking our product to market initially. So we offer a secure communication system to organizations across the globe who effectively need to share sensitive information when they can't be in the same room as each other. And that requirement has increased quite drastically since I've joined the company. The founding team initially founded the company in 2013 following the significant demise in the BlackBerry devices, where CEOs across the globe were coming in with their new iPhones and Android phones and saying that they needed to utilize them for corporate use. So that left a significant gap in terms of the enterprise communication space, where the likes of WhatsApp, Fiber, Signal, Telegram were starting to be adopted as a enterprise communication platform when they were never designed to be that. They started to brand themselves as secure because they offered some form of encryption, but we'll likely go in to this throughout this recording around, encryption doesn't equal security when it comes to communications. And our founding team sort of understood that based on their previous experience. So they decided to move back to Belfast. Sort of the band got back together and set up the company from here. And from there, I joined in 2015 and immediately saw that, like any company based here, you normally set up your initial clients in Northern Ireland and then you expand to the UK, right? We didn't think that we could do that day one because the understanding around the problem we were trying to solve just wasn't really there. So we immediately set up channel partnerships, took the product to different parts of the Middle East and Africa so that we could develop design clients who would help us drive our product roadmap. And we did that quite successfully within the legal space, working with law firms, government organizations, financial institutions, and oil and gas companies back then as well. So that's what helped drive the product that it is today that we'll go in on. But yeah, we're fully UK based company, or fully developed the platform based out of Belfast under one roof. And we're growing our team out to different parts of the globe. Our platform is fully designed and developed in the UK with our UK data centers as well. And we're seeing much more requirements, or much higher requirements for secure comms across the globe today as there was when we first started.
Yeah, I think that's that's really the key thing here. The reason that you do this, the threats, sort of your purpose as a business, and I do harp on around this sort of golden circle, Sinek's golden circle of why we do something and what we do and how we do it is what we'll come on to, the platform itself. But the purpose, what's the purpose of Salt? What are you addressing?
We're addressing so many different things. We have so many different conversations, every day, where we find out that we're addressing so many different problems that we haven't even thought of before. But I mean, initially, we're addressing the ability for individuals and users within organizations to be able to share sensitive information in a way that they had previously been doing, utilizing consumer systems, right? Where people are sharing scarily sensitive information, sometimes about public safety, utilizing consumer platforms. And what we're doing is providing control back to the organization, because that's the biggest issue when it comes to security around communications, is that there's zero control for the organization around what's being done with their information. Because we're used to these, I use consumer messaging platforms every single day to message my friends and family about matters that I would never say it to them, but stuff that doesn't matter, right? They're not important, they're not sensitive. And I'm happy to utilize those because everybody uses it. Everybody's got WhatsApp on their phone. But those systems, because everybody uses it, makes them some of the easiest targets to gain access to your phone that you have. And you have zero idea what's being done with your information. I mean, they're effectively data extraction tools at this point, because we'll agree to all of the T's and C's without reading them. We'll agree that we've no idea where the information is going, who gains access to it, whether it's advertisers, whether it's not, right? But what organizations just can't fathom with that and can't allow is the inability to control what's being done. And that's the important bit. We give back control in a time where we have very limited control around our data and what's being done with it. So we give back control to the organizations that we sell to. And that's the major barrier that we take away.
The government now, and Lindy Cameron actually at Cyber UK, which was hosted in Belfast, I think at the ICC recently, talks about the implementation of the government's new PSTI, they call it the PSTI bill, the Product Security and Telecommunications Infrastructure Bill, which puts an onus on businesses to make sure that their platform, whether it's instant messaging platform like yours or IT systems that businesses or British citizens are using, must be aware of and plug the back end security. So, they banned TikTok off all government devices because we know now that TikTok is basically by signing up to it, you're giving permission for them to access all the information on your phone and geolocate and so on. So threats like that, what are the main threats that you guys are tracking at the moment that people should know about?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a number. Obviously, the TikTok use case is very, very important because there's a significant government backing there, and that's the case. Depending on the types of conversations that we're having, we're working with global law firms, for example, who need to be able to communicate into different offices across the globe, and they understand that there's different government backing of certain apps that they prefer to use. So that's, it's geographically, you need to be able to adhere to the regulations, but also provide a secure comm system, right? And there's different ways in which that can be done around the hosting requirements and hosting regulations of it. In terms of the two key ones that we see today, to be very candid, the first would be that we would go into organizations and they often have, WhatsApp infestation or a different consumer system, whether it's Signal, Telegram, Fiber, WeChat, whatever it might be, right? Where they have employees across the globe sometimes utilizing these free consumer systems to share very sensitive information. And that would be the number one thing, and we've sort of touched upon it very briefly earlier, is that these systems are the areas or the platforms which we share some of the most sensitive information on, whether it's imagery, videos, sensitive textual information, documents. And for organizations, that's just not sustainable, not suffice from a security standpoint, but they're also being utilized today now as a route to infiltrate devices, because everybody has these platforms on their phones. All I would need from you, Rick, is your telephone number, which I might get from a business card, from an event website. I might be able to scrape from the dark web. I could get it through multiple ways, right? And once I have your telephone number, I'd then be able to contact you through a consumer messaging system, which you will very highly likely have on your device. From there, I can then infiltrate your device with a Pegasus attack, with a different malware attack, spyware attack, whatever it might be. So instead of utilizing these systems as a secure messaging platform, they're being utilized as a way in which I can infiltrate a user's device. I can tap into their communications. I can infiltrate their device through, a WhatsApp call. I can then go on. I have access, delete that call from the call history, and I have access to your device until you turn it off or until it runs out of battery, because that's how these types of systems work, right? Yep. So they're not there for the long term. But how many people let their phone go dead now? Not very many. So no. There for quite a while. So that's one that we see quite a lot, where we would go into large government organizations, for example, around a specific use case. They'll sometimes block these consumer platforms being downloadable onto these types of devices that they use every single day. And we're on there as the primary method of communication to ensure that it's completely locked down, controlled, and they have full access in order to be able to control who gains access to the communications, who's to be able to communicate with who, because that's very important as well, right? You need a closed platform. If you're a large organization or you're dealing with sensitive information, you don't want, if I'm sending you a message on a consumer system, you could forward that on to anybody. I don't need to know. I will not have any visibility to that. And the information is accessible to anybody across the globe who you may wish to send that to. From an organization's perspective, they want to lock that down, right? They want to be able to control the lines of communication. They want to be able to restrict information flowing in and out of different apps. So we effectively sort of go in with a clean slate and say you can control who gains access to the system, who those users can communicate with, different security aspects as to whether users are able to copy and paste, whether they're able to download attachments from within the app onto the device, because that's a whole different problem as well. So it's about, again, the control aspect from that perspective, but about the key risk is these consumer systems are being used as an avenue for larger cyber attacks within the mobile security landscape. That would be one. And then very quickly, I'll touch upon the other one is that whether it's a consumer system or whether it's a collaboration tool is the other side. Many people are seeing collaboration tools as the alternative to a consumer or a secure communication system, right? And that's because when we were all hit in 2020 with the COVID restrictions and regulations, we all rolled out video conferencing tools that was normally just an add-on to what we already had from an enterprise solution provider perspective. And that meant that we were sort of filling a void with something we thought was good enough at that time, right? We were prioritizing productivity instead of security. And that was absolutely fair enough whenever we all were hit with remote working and we couldn't meet face-to-face anymore. But 3 years on, it's sort of time that we focus on security again rather than productivity, because we know how to be productive at home. This is not a new thing. Yeah. Hardly any of us are going back to 5 days a week in the office. So we know how to work from our home office, from the kitchen, whatever it might be, right? But many people have said, Zoom or Microsoft Teams that we're using is good enough, but realistically, they're so intertwined with the rest of your enterprise systems that if I'm a Microsoft Teams house, for example, one of the initial areas of focus for a hacker will be to get into your Active Directory, because it holds all the information, right? It shuts down all of your systems. So if I was to hit a large enterprise tomorrow, or a large bank with a cyber attack, the first place I would go would probably be their Active Directory, because it would wipe out the majority of their systems. Once I'm on there and I'm hit with a cyber attack, how am I communicating with the users or with the employees of the organization that don't access email, don't access Teams, don't access shared documents or shared drives or these different platforms that I have access to from Active Directory? And that's a use case that we're seeing more and more at the minute, right? Is people are coming to us and they're all coming with the same problem. So we sort of started to label it as, well, what we're prioritizing, what we're saying to you that we can provide is effectively a safe haven communications network, where if everything else is offline, if everything else has been intercepted or hacked or whatever it might be, you can immediately gain access to Salt and utilize that as a safe haven communications network. Because we might look at Maersk as an example a number of years ago when they got hit with, might have been NotPetya or whatever it might be, because there's different terms for these types of attacks that come around quite regularly. And I think their CEO was very open about he ran the company off WhatsApp for the week because that was the only place he could be able to communicate with the other senior executives, the other board members. So that's the other side. It's the business continuity, the crisis management side of things. We're seeing massive opportunity from our perspective, but massive hicks from an enterprise perspective in that if everything else goes down, there's nowhere to go. And that's some of the key solutions that we provide.
Yeah. So, and like you say, we're all using instant messaging platforms for social things. And increasingly more and more of us are seeing smishing attacks that we might have seen through texting, but then coming in spurious messaging through a freely accessible platform. But what you have is locked down. So Salt is effectively, I like to think of it as an intranet. Everybody is in a closed, trusted circle. It's not out. It's not available. So, if you and I are not connected in a business, and you have Salt and I have Salt, we're not able to see each other. Only the group that we have, and within Optimal Risk, we use it for our clients. We give them a seat, then they're in the circle, and when we don't need them, they drop them out again. So that's a really important aspect for us. You touched upon Pegasus, for instance. For those that don't know what the Pegasus spyware is, can you explain that to us?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be a subject matter expert, even within our field, because there's so many different things. But Pegasus is effectively a spyware that governments utilize to gain access to certain users' devices, right? And allows them to tap into the information being shared from mobile devices. The thing is, once you have that technology there, it's going to be used by people who shouldn't have access to it as well. So you're going to have Pegasus, and you're going to have thousands of other types of spyware instances out there that will be able to access sensitive information on users' devices, tap into their microphones, tap into their cameras. So it's effectively being utilized to watch, listen, and see everything that people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And there's been high-profile individuals who have been hit with the Pegasus attacks in recent years. Jeff Bezos being one. There's multiple other users. I think Boris Johnson was a target as well, if not a victim. So there's been multiple other users who you can very easily gain access to the device. Like I said, if you have a Pegasus attack, one of the routes that they were utilizing to gain access to people's devices was through WhatsApp. And that was one of the areas through WhatsApp and Signal, where they were phoning someone through WhatsApp. 4 a.m. I could phone Rick. Likelihood is your phone's on silent, but I could phone for a millisecond, gain access to your system, delete that missed call so that you didn't know that missed call ever took place. And then from there, I effectively am watching and seeing everything that you're doing, and I can intercept your microphone, do whatever needs to be done. And there's loads of different intricacies with Pegasus attacks and other types of attacks that governments, individuals, hackers can tap into. But
kind of terrifying, really.
Yeah,
But before everybody sort of has a cow, I think Pegasus, last time I read it, is about £800,000 to access to install it. So you'd have to be a fairly significant target, right, for Pegasus to be used against you. So don't worry about that if you're listening to this, unless of course you're a CSO, CISO that has responsibility for somebody that would be a target for that, like Jeff Bezos, for instance. Then you probably should be paying attention to it. But so people accessing the phone and the camera on the audio, the microphone and the camera on your phone, that wouldn't work with your platform because it's an app on the phone, right? So they don't necessarily get access to the app.
Right? They have access to the app in terms of the encryption. So people need to have access to apps, right? One of the biggest issues that we came across with even mobile interception. So you spoke about the price of Pegasus. Mobile interception came to the forefront with Edward Snowden as part of the trials, and then again with the movie and different podcasts that's been done.
Yeah.
And the cost of IMSI catchers back then were about about $500,000, whereas now you can go on to Alibaba or eBay, for example, and gain access for a few $100s. So there's always ways in which the price is being driven down for these types of interception tools, right? But when it comes to the threats of these spyware attacks or malware attacks, where again you don't know if it's on your device initially or ever, to be fair, there's different security routes that go beyond encryption that you need to be able to have within your communication systems, whether it's ratcheting keys, Diffie-Hellman technology. There's loads of stuff that happens in the background. Again, we know that WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, or I say WhatsApp, Signal, Viber, Telegram have end-to-end encrypted, and they advertise that. But it goes beyond that in terms of some of the ways that you need to mitigate the risk of those types of attacks taking place, or having closed system or closed contact lists, being able to lock down who those device users are able to communicate with. As well as that, you also don't know what's happening with the data at rest, whether it's being encrypted at rest, whether it's just encrypted between calls, between messages. And we don't know how regularly those keys are ratcheting. And for some organizations, really sensitive organizations, they also don't trust open source encryption protocols, and they want their own encryption built into systems, which again, WhatsApp and Fiber and Signal, these platforms that are being utilized as the routes for Pegasus and for different types of spyware, you can't control that. So it's about being able to provide an organization with a lockdown system, a completely closed system, which will mitigate the majority of your risks, because WhatsApp and these other consumer platforms are completely open. Like I said, all I need is a phone number, and then you're added to a global directory of users who are able to be infiltrated or be able to be targeted with these attacks. Whereas if you have a closed lockdown platform, then who's gaining access to it. You need to be able to scan the device upon install to understand whether the device is already infiltrated. So that's a handful of other things that we do. If your device is jailbroken, as we sort of call it internally, which means it's got stuff on there that you don't want as an organization on there, then it will crash, to ensure that you're not gaining access to Salt, you're not sharing that information. So there's multiple different routes that you can go down to mitigate the risk and to cover yourselves. And then we do multiple different things within the application that people will not see, because there's loads more different layers when it comes to a secure comm system than just encryption.
So that was my next question is, what does encryption mean to you? Because, on my openly available instant messaging platforms, it says your call is now you're encrypted with this person, your friend, and it says your encryption has changed and you're now encrypted, but that's not the same as what you're doing, right?
No, I mean, encryption is a fundamental aspect of all communication systems. I mean, we would expect, and we would have thought in 2023 now, text messaging should have some form of encryption in there. I think iManage does, but encryption, we always said, and we've said from 2013, right? When it comes to secure communications, encryption doesn't equal security. You need to have encryption multiplied by the highest level of control to be able to have secure communications, right? And what I mean by that is, encryption, we've swapped out our encryption 5 times in the last 5 years, right? So we don't know what level of encryption these systems are using, whether it's the current version that is the latest and greatest, or whether it's something that was 3 years ago and it's just been put in. So when it comes to encryption, there's so many different types of encryption, number one, right? There's so many different government-backed encryption within other systems as well that maybe put off international users utilizing it. But when it comes to encryption, everything should be encrypted, right? It should be a prerequisite of a communication system today. But unless you have visibility to that encryption, unless you have the ability to control what's being done with your data, who's gaining access to it, where it's being stored, if it's being stored in a UK data center, whether it's being stored within your own infrastructure, again, that's an additional warm and fuzzy, which governments and large enterprises should have and should have the ability to control. But it's the encryption itself. You should be using 256, right? You should be using the latest and greatest open source encryption within these consumer systems, but we don't know what they're using the majority of the time unless you dig really hard. But for government organizations, unless you have that level of control, unless you have the accountability aspect, the encryption doesn't really matter, because it's not the thing that will will leave your communications under threat.
So I guess for most people, if it's for personal communications, just sharing stuff with family and friends, photographs, then the encryption there is entirely appropriate. But if you're using it for work and for other sensitive, personally identifiable information, GDPR issues, then, not necessarily locked down. And it's a gamble, isn't it? You might be a target, you might not ever get targeted, but who can take that risk, especially in large corporations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my mom shared a photo of her bank card with me a few weeks ago, and I told her off for it. You shouldn't be doing that stuff on WhatsApp, right?
No.
So you can share sensitive information depending on who you are, right? Sensitive can be, I don't know, but you should be sending and sharing sensitive information.
No.
I mean, with organizations who previously had been sharing stuff around where they were going to be at a certain time, right?
Yeah.
For them, that was highly sensitive because it left themselves open to physical security issues, different type of stuff that was being tapped into, right? So the level of sensitivity, it depends upon what field you work in, who you are as an individual.
Yeah.
In terms of what is deemed as sensitive. But for individual users who are sharing details of a night out, or what you're going to get a friend for Christmas or their birthday present, that's absolutely fine, right? We all utilize WhatsApp, Fiber, Signal for all that different type of stuff. But for sensitive information, it's the inability and the lack of visibility to what's being done with your information is the tricky bit, right? When we go into organizations across the globe, we sort of, rather than trying to get them to trust us, because why should they trust us, right? With the amount of stories that are out there about these consumer platforms and the inability to validate what's being done with your information, I wouldn't expect anybody to trust me at all, because what we're doing is providing a secure comm system. So we sort of, the way we approach these types of conversations is we go in with our hands up and say, we don't expect you to trust us. Why would you? So we will give you transparency, visibility, and control to everything that you do for your own system, right? And we can do that because we don't provide a system to the wider consumer market. We don't offer this as a mass communication tool. We specifically zone in on government organizations and enterprises who we can validate who they are, what their use cases are, who their users are. Because if you're opening this up to a mass communication system or a consumer platform, which anybody can download from the App Store or Play Store, then there's definitely, even national security requirements that you will need to be able to gain access to that information from a lawful interception perspective, from a security perspective. But because what we're doing is providing the system to private clients who we validated, who have went through a serious due diligence process, then we are able to provide them with that level of control. But unless you've done that process, or unless you've asked those questions, then it's nearly impossible for organizations to be able to control the system as they need to be able to do so.
That's, I think, it's a really important aspect, because we know back in the past there were encrypted systems. I won't mention, but in 10 years ago, we were using a prolific system that was probably the only one that was on the market back in 2011. So that what we know was being used by, we suspected was being used by criminal organizations, drug dealers, terrorist networks. But I think we've learned from that, and now, so you don't allow anybody to use this. People have to purchase into your salt circles. So you make sure that it's not being abused by people who shouldn't have that level of,
Exactly. If it fell into the wrong hands, it's a very easy way to kill your business, right? And it's also just not the approach. It was one of the key things that we set out from day one. I mean, all of our competitors, you can go onto the website, you can download a number or purchase a number of licenses for X amount of dollars, right? Whereas we have to have that conversation. We have to understand your requirements. If it's a distributor who wants 5,000 licenses because their clients would use it, but we can't find out who their clients are and we can't understand the use cases, they just need 5,000 licenses today, they're not going to gain access to the system, right? Or if they're coming in and offering a certain amount of Bitcoin, as much as I would hate to know how much we've rejected in the over the years, but we probably reject more business than we take in, because there needs to be that level of assurance around the use cases and around who is utilizing the platform, because if it fell into the wrong hands, then we would have three-letter agencies knocking on our door asking for access to the system because user A, they believe, is using it for illegal reasons. Whereas today, if a three-letter agency came to knock on our door and say, we need to understand what Rick Mountfield is saying, I said, listen, this is the due diligence process we went through. This is the organization it's being sold to, and these are the reasons why it's being deployed, and we can stand behind everything that we've done.
Okay, so you know, don't answer this if you don't want to. So you mentioned that your mum sent her bank cards via WhatsApp. Does she not have a friends and family Salt account? And if not, is there some reason your mum doesn't have access to Salt? Is she too nefarious?
Should phone me all the days, all the hours of the day, and I like to keep it for.
You know, I'm joking, of course. But I do. But what it does is this segue is about usability, and you know, my dad, your mum, and some of our private clients who are all ages, generally ultra high net worth. We want them to use Salt for their communications with us for services we provide, and you know, it's important that when we get them to download this app Salt, that it is intuitively usable straight away. We don't have to teach them how to use it, because ultimately it operates in the same way that the other instant messaging platforms do, but with enhanced capability. How important was it for you to develop the app to be familiar to everybody? I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
Absolutely. It's one of the most important things that we continually ask ourselves internally, because if it's not easy to use, people won't use it. We've all utilized clunky, difficult to use, enterprise systems in the past, right? Yeah. And immediately we'll try to revert back to something that's easier to use, right, internally or whatever it might be available to us. With what we're doing, if we didn't make it easy to use, intuitive, if it was difficult to utilize on a day-to-day basis, the alternatives are right there on your phone already. You don't need to go and look. The alternatives are WhatsApp, Signal, Fiber, whatever you want to use, right? Those alternatives are immediately available to you. So if we didn't make it intuitive, easy to use, then we would be selling to clients and with knowing that they were immediately going to revert back to insecure methods of communication, which is never an option for us. So, you know, like we initially founded the company in 2013. We thought it would take 12 to 18 months to take the first product to market. And the reason why it took much longer is because these consumer systems kept bringing out new functionality, kept changing the way they looked and felt. So they were continuously moving the goalposts, and we couldn't launch for day one, making it something that wasn't very familiar to the end user. And it's familiarity is a good word to use, because if it's not familiar and easy to use, then you'll revert back to something else that in our case would be an insecure method of communication.
That is probably the paradox that fits in security across the board. It doesn't matter if it's cyber security or physical security or, you know, crime prevention through environmental design. People will always take the easiest route, and that's just human nature. We're inherently lazy by design. We want things to be as good as they can be, but as easy as possible to use, and so we'll always default to the easiest path. You know, within Septed, if you've got we will walk across the grass to get there instead of taking, you know, 1 minute longer to stay off the grass, because it's the most direct route. So you know, it's one of the things I enjoy about the platform we're using within our SLT is that we had to pull everybody off using, you know, a free available platform they had on their phones and say, look, take it to Salt. We want to, you know, talk about these things encrypted, and now it's just second nature. And you mentioned, you know, that these things are advancing, and we know we're in the fourth industrial revolution. We are integrated with technology now, whether we believe it or not. We all have connected devices that make life easy for us. We don't even think about it. But it's widely accepted that technology is doubling in advancement every 2 years. And you know, my wife went to a concert recently that was ABBA, but it was holographically projected ABBA. And you know, she said after 2 minutes you forgot that there was a hologram. You literally thought you were watching ABBA from the 70s on the stage, even though you know in your brain that's not possible. But so my question is, where do you think this sort of technology is going to go into the future? Are we going to see encrypted holographic communications? I mean, what are you guys planning for? Where is it going to be?
Yeah, it's crazy to think. I mean, it could be a type of thing where we're all communicating like Star Wars. But it's crazy to think back. I mean, I remember the first device that I had was in the 90s, and I shared that device with a few of my family members. It was a BT Cellnet mobile phone, and then it moved on to the Nokia 3310. And you know, whenever you had those types of devices, you had the Motorola Razr flip phones, for example, that came out of that. You always said, imagine there was, you know, video calling. Could you imagine what that was like? And then 10 years later, there it is. So it's not even that these technologies are taking long to develop. They're very, very advanced. They're very quick in terms of the innovation around it. Hologram calls, I don't see why not. That wouldn't happen within the next 15 years. But it's crazy to think just how quickly technology has advanced in the last 20 to 25 years, and how quickly these advancements move from expensive POC, you know, sometimes exhibitions, to then immediately looking at 5 years, it's rolled out to everybody on the device that they have, regardless of what it is. It's not a specialized iPhone. It's every smartphone across the globe has these types of accessibility. And the hologram stuff, realistically, you know, could be a hologram, it could be 3D modeling, it could be whatever it might be, right? There's going to be so many different options. There'll likely be built-in projectors on people's devices to be able to do that, whether it's front-facing or backward-facing. So I think that's likely something we'll see over the next 15, 20 years. Like I said, it could be much quicker. You know, people are getting smarter.
So I bought my first mobile phone in Belfast, actually. I was based there in the early 90s. No, probably about 93. I think I bought the first phone out from a shop down by the harbour side of Belfast city centre. You know, we all bought the same phone. There really was only one phone that we could get at that time. I had a little antenna we'd pull out the top, and we'd sit in our rooms phoning somebody that was 10 foot away to see if we wanted to go to the bar or not. You know, it was just for the novelty of use.
You could have done it on a cup and a string.
Oh, definitely. Could have shouted. It would have been cheaper as well, because it wasn't cheap back then to make a phone call. You know, but yeah, it's it fascinates me how these things go on, and I you know, I think that everything is a risk assessment. So I mean, Salt, I think, is a brilliant tool. We really value having it. It's our relationship with you is, you know, is something that's a very reciprocal arrangement. But I think that going into the future, having this sort of more readily available, and again with the product security telecommunications infrastructure bill, a lot of other communications apps are going to have to be more diligent about the security that they apply to their applications, whether it's cloud-based or on-prem. They will have to be more nailed down. So you're ahead of the curve with that. And it's really you know, it's exciting to see where these sort of platforms are going to go in the future. But it all starts with a risk assessment. And for me, if you're listening to this and you know you don't work in security, and you know you're quite happily tick along with your you know, free to download application, don't worry if you've got nothing, you know, sensitive family. But if you are a business, or you are responsible for the security of a business, or you're a business owner that has IP that it would destroy your business to lose that, then you know, what's the impact? And the likelihood you might feel is quite low. But if the impact of it happening was to shut you down, then why wouldn't you go to something that is absolutely nailed down and get people to use that, well, here's an application that is instinctive and intuitive to use because it looks and feels like every other platform you have, except it's not the same. It is on steroids as far as security goes. So the purpose of this webinar is to let people know that there are better options and more secure options should you feel that you need it. And John, I can't think of anybody else. You and Joe, Nicole, you have for me the answer for people that have those considerations. So if anybody wanted to know a little bit more about what Salt Communications do, what's the email address they can find your website and your email should you wish to help people out, because that's what we tend to do is we give them the nugget of information. If they wish to pick up on it, they'll call the experts. So how do they do that?
Yes, they can go to the website, saltcommunications.com, or they can email me directly if they want. It's john.bailie, BAILIE, at saltcommunications.com as well. You just get used to spelling the surname.
I know you do. It's my wife's maiden name, so I know exactly what you mean. But there it is. It's on the bottom of the screen, so you can see it. There'll be no mistakes.
Yeah, and we've known each other quite a while, so I don't know whether I've spoken too quickly, and there could have been subtitles the whole way.
Yeah,
with Belfast accent. I'm not sure.
No, we've had plenty of different accents on this, mate. Don't worry. Listen, I really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you guys are busy. I look forward to seeing you at the end of the month for the conference. That's going to be exciting to show people, all these different products that we've got during that. But for now, mate, I'll let you get back to your day. Thanks again, and best wishes to Joe, and say hello to Nicole for me.
I will do. Thanks very much, Rick. Pleasure.
Thanks. If this has been useful to you, then there are 10 other webinars on our YouTube channel. You can access them using this link along the bottom now, the YouTube Optimal Risk Group site. We have got lots of different topics on there. Like I say, they're not all about security. They're just about awareness for you about what's available within our very diverse industry. This will be published later this week on Friday, and there will be many more coming. We do one every 2 weeks. So for now, John, I'll say goodbye to you, and I'll say goodbye to everybody else, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Bye for now.